Shall we begin? أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أهله وصحبه ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى يوم الدين. You guys, today we have another extraordinary young person with us, someone who I consider an activist, an aspiring doctor, a philosopher, mashallah.
Inshallah.
And she's actually part of the leadership team for our sisterly team as well. And one thing I've come to really admire about your sister Nadia is your passion for learning and knowledge. It's incredible. May Allah keep that spark always alive. And genuinely, I have a lot of respect for everything you do. May Allah bless you, keep you strong.
I mean, Ustad Ameer, I can go on and on how much I respect you, but all I'm going to say is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala keep our
Please tell that to my wife.
I mean, I do, so I don't know what you want me to say.
No, I was kidding. But alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah. I appreciate the kind words. Keep us in your du'as.
Yeah, I mean, just give me a hug from Ibrahim, okay? I miss him so much.
I got you. He's been, alhamdulillah, he's been doing good. He's been doing great. He's out of the blue. So, Sister Ali, if you remember last time, we started the life of Abdullah ibn Umar. And what I shared last time was that Abdullah ibn Umar, this is like the son of the famous Umar bin Khattab himself, and how he kind of was someone who was distinguished by his love for the Sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, and how he was like borderline obsessed. And I mentioned last time as well that he was a teenager when he accepted Islam. And a lot of people don't know that when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, he was just 20 years old. But here's the crazy part, and this leads us to the next theme of his life. Despite the fact that he was only 20 when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, somehow, some way, Abdullah ibn Umar ends up becoming one of the most knowledgeable companions of the Prophet ﷺ. Now, when I say a companion being knowledgeable, people are not exactly impressed, because there's this stereotype in our head that all the companions were like sheikhs. All of them are like spitting knowledge and dropping bars. Yeah, it didn't work like that. Companions actually specialize. Like, I don't know if you are familiar with the genre of the biographies of the companions. Some specialize in becoming statesmen, military tacticians. Some were like really good at hadith. Some were really dope in Quran. Others specialize in fiqh and issuing rulings. Well, Abdullah ibn Umar right here, what the great scholar Ibn Hazm tells us, that there were 7 companions who would give a lot of fatwas and legal rulings. They're like the jurist type. Amongst the 7 is Abdullah ibn Umar. It's crazy. Like, I mean, he's a teenager when the Prophet passes away, but he continued to learn, and was, I mean, if that's not accomplishment enough, his CV is like, deep. He ends up transmitting 2,500 plus hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, and he's in the top 5 most prolific narrators of hadith. Man, that's like, mashallah, his resume is stacked.
Oh my God. On top of that, with his father being Umar bin Khattab.
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure at all.
Wow. And this is something I admire about the Prophet and Umar bin Khattab as well, is that they did tarbiyah in a way, like the Prophet left leaders at every rank of society. Like, isn't it amazing how a young person like him is so passionate about the deen that he goes on to study until he becomes a scholar of his own right? Like, he's not treating Islam as his parents' religion. Like, he's like, I got a stake in this too. That blows me away every time. Because usually, I don't know if in Urdu we say chirag tale andhera. You know what I'm talking about? It's like, so people who don't know the expression, right underneath the candle, you have a dark spot, which is basically an expression to say when your father is like a big shot, you're going to be a loser, probably, because you're never going to live up to him, or you never have your own identity, so you end up going the opposite direction. But here in this situation, father like son, amazing. Both ended up being incredible. It's crazy. So, yeah, subhanAllah. So now, continuing on this theme of Abdullah ibn Umar and his knowledge, this will shock a lot of people that Abdullah ibn Umar took 4 years to memorize Baqarah. 4 years that's 2 juz, Sister Nadia,
Right.
2.5. I mean, we got Burmese, Bengali kids who don't know a word of Arabic memorizing the entire Quran in 3 years. Not 2 juz.
So long to memorize.
So that's what I want to ask you and also the audience, like, before I kind of give it away. What's taking so, like, I mean, does he have mental issues? That can't be the case, because he memorized 2,500 hadith, same guy. So it can't be a cognitive issue. What's taking so long?
I mean, my guess would be I don't know if it was his father who did this, but he refused to memorize another ayat of the Quran until he practiced it in his own life. So I'm not sure if that's something he was practicing as well, but that's what my guess would be. But
So
I'm
you're
not sure.
saying because of practice, it slowed him down. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so he wouldn't memorize the next ayah until he practiced whatever ayats he
Yes.
is.
Yes, and that's spot on. That literally is Abdullah bin Mas'ud tells us the companions would stick to like 10 ayahs at a time. And until they learned the recitation, memorization, halal and haram of it, rulings, understanding,
Right.
then they would move on. So
Right.
this tells you the companions would approach the Quran not just to memorize, but to internalize.
Yeah.
You know, and they were conservative in memorization, liberal in applying or application. We're the opposite. In our day, mashallah, in Milwaukee alone, I can think of at least 2 dozen people who are like, they've memorized the Quran. There are universities in the Muslim world you can't even get admission to unless you got like half the Quran memorized.
Right.
So it's crazy, like just how their attitude and approach was. I don't know how you've seen in your family, because in my family, I've seen people, we take the Quran, we wrap it up into this fancy cloth, and we put it right on the in the most unaccessible area of the house, inshallah, to be seen next Ramadan. That's
Right.
how it. I don't know what your experience has been.
I mean, so my family, we unfortunately I don't come from the most religious background. I'll just say that very upfront. So I
No
actually
problem.
have two Qurans and it's right by my bedside. So I'm forced to see
MashaAllah.
it when I wake up and before I go to bed. So I read. I don't go crazy. I read just a couple of pages because I care more
Alhamdulillah.
about what do you call it? Consistency rather than how much I'm doing.
That's
I don't know if that's the
beautiful.
right approach, but who knows?
So, I mean, best, most beloved deeds to Allah are the consistent ones. It's amazing. Um, I don't know if I've mentioned this on live.
Mhm.
They say about Imam Siraj Wahaj, his Quran, if you were to look at the translation of his Quran, it's so worn out. And they're like post-it notes, like sticky notes sticking out everywhere. Because he's
Right.
so actively engaged with it. It's beautiful.
Alhamdulillah.
And now we have in our they see culture, they're like, we're debating, oh, you can't write on the Quran, it's the pen, it's a pencil, and we're like freaking out. Like, please engage with the text. You know,
Right.
Allah didn't send it just to become a decoration. Um, so moving from this theme of knowledge and how knowledgeable Abdullah bin Umar was, we all know that knowledge doesn't automatically make you noble.
Right.
Yeah. Um, in fact, knowledge is not virtuous in and of itself, is because of what it's supposed to lead to, and that is a beautiful relationship with Allah. That fear, balance of fear and hope. And Abdullah ibn Umar, mashallah, is very knowledgeable, but what kind of a character does he have? Like, is that translating into his behavior? Is it making him a fabulous human being? So, what kind of manners is, because that's what we're trying to learn through these series of Sunnah Fix sessions, learning the Hadith, where we learn the mannerisms of the Prophet. How is Abdullah ibn Umar on this front with all the knowledge that he carries? One of the students of Abdullah ibn Umar tells us that Abdullah ibn Umar, whenever he would go to the marketplace, whenever he's in the bazaar, any person he would meet, young or old, he would say the salam and he would initiate salam. That was his habit. Now, maybe some people are not impressed by this. They're like, okay, big deal. Like he says salam, like kudos. You know, maybe it doesn't blow you away, but just gotta keep in mind. You gotta keep this in mind. Is that Abdullah ibn Umar at that time is like a celebrity. Like you got people coming from Syria and Egypt coming to study with Abdullah ibn Umar, the great son of Umar bin Khattab, the scholar of Medina, and people are like, you know, coming from far and wide just to meet him. In fact, they used to say in the season of Hajj, the line just to meet Abdullah ibn Umar would be like a mile long. So this guy is a celebrity. Yet for him to be this accessible, Sister Nadia,
Right.
and to be this available to people, that's not easy. Like he's got paparazzi following him and like checking him out and watching every little thing he does. And to be this down to earth, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the story, if you've heard, I don't want to generalize the celebrities in our day and age, but like the celebrities in our day and age, they hire people to shield them from people.
Right.
Yeah. A while ago, I think this is a true, if my memory serves me correctly,
Mhm.
Mark Zuckerberg bought 4 properties around his house just so he doesn't have to deal with anybody. I mean, legit, there are some privacy concerns and people are creep. You know, we've got a bunch
Right.
of creeps walking around. So there's definitely, we don't want to judge the intention, but there's this elitist culture that you can't just ignore. You know, it exists. You know, before COVID happened, I was hearing that Drake was offering these VIP packages where you get to like meet him, have a dinner with him, and have a car ride or maybe a backstage pass or whatever,
Hmm.
upwards of thousands of dollars just for like a meet and greet. Like that's that's how that's how it is. And yet Abdullah ibn Umar, in contrast, not to like compare him with celebrities of our time, because there's no comparison,
There
but
is no.
just it just stands, the contrast stands out. His students would tell us that Abdullah ibn Umar would not eat dinner unless if there was an orphan sitting on his table. That was his like practice. Like he
Wow.
had to have somebody from the lower strata of society sitting with him. So this classism, this what's the word? What's the like, you know, this whole culture of, oh, I only hang out with doctors or people in my zip code.
That's exactly what I was thinking of because unfortunately, you were kind of alluding to this earlier that people like to stick in their own cliques or people who are very familiar with them. But from what we're learning about Abdullah bin Umar, that he will go out and meet anyone no matter what your background is. And in fact, he will go out and meet people that were less fortunate than him, which that's so sweet. I love hearing stuff like that.
And that's beautiful. I mean, they genuinely had a soft spot for poor people, you know.
Right,
And or Abdullah bin Umar is a Qurayshi, so he's a noble
right.
family. So it's not like he's like a low class himself. Like he's, mashallah, he's got a status, and he's the son of the Khalifa. So if anyone has a right to be reserved, it would be him.
Right.
It blows me away just how accessible and available they were. I know Imam Suhaib used to say that scholars in Islam are more like Cornell West and less like Stephen Hawkins, you know? More like out there, available, accessible, shaping policy, you know, in the
Hmm.
trenches of societies. So, and last thing that I wanted to share about the life of Abdullah ibn Umar, and I saved the best for last, at least the effect that it had on me, and that is the spirituality and the piety Abdullah ibn Umar had. There's a story that we're told. The narration goes like this. A man comes to Abdullah ibn Umar and he says, Ya Aba Abdul Rahman, can I make you some antacids? So Abdullah ibn Umar is like, what's that? Oh, sorry, I think the pronoun antacid or antacid. I'm not sure about the exact pronunciation, but it's
Okay.
you know, the medication you take to reduce acid, right? So he's like, can I whip something up for you? He's like, what's that? He's like, well, you know, if you ever end up binge eating, this will kind of smooth the process, you know? So Abdullah ibn Umar tells him that I haven't ate to my full in a few months. And then he immediately tells this person, I didn't tell you this to impress you. And I definitely didn't tell you this so you would think I'm broke in need of financial assistance. No, no, no. I can afford it. That's not the issue.
Hmm.
The thing is, I grew up amongst people who would not satiate themselves. And they were used to keeping their nafs under a leash. So they wouldn't give their nafs everything it desired and wanted.
Right.
It's kind of like they didn't let their nafs become a wild animal taking them wherever. They kept their nafs tamed. So Abdullah ibn Umar would actually watch his diet so he's not it's kind of spoiling himself too much, because once your nafs starts getting out of control, it affects other areas of your spiritual practice. So he's like, I haven't ate to my full in months. And he actually maintained that practice. It's so incredible how they watched.
Right. I mean, what I'm thinking of right now is from what my very limited knowledge on him is that when he gave the fatwa, he was very careful on even that. And when I
Yes,
think about that, he has known the Prophet ﷺ and all the companions when he was very young, and he could easily give his opinion. But instead, he was very careful. He watched what he said. And correct me if I'm wrong, he wouldn't give any fatwa unless he had it completely memorized or hadiths or whatever it was, which
absolutely.
wow, that's just the control they have on their egos, on their nafs and everything. It's incredible.
And you know, just to your point, you know how
Mhm.
you mentioned he's careful about giving a fatwa.
Right,
And we have, I'm not going to be mentioning that story today, or at least wasn't planning to, but people would harass him to give a fatwa and he wouldn't. And they'll be like, well, it's a simple question. Can't you just answer? He's like, yo, nothing is simple because
right,
in the court of God, I can be held responsible. But notice though, because he kept his appetite in check and that kind of disciplines your nafs, now that disciplined nafs helps you in other aspects of your life, including giving fatwas.
right,
Now that same discipline comes through where you to in order to look knowledgeable and a big shot scholar, you're not fatwa happy. You're like, no, 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 no. I gotta keep my nafs in check. I'm not gonna give in to the popular pressure and to maintain my street cred and just say anything. No, no, no,
Right.
no. Keeps himself, and that's where they were. They kept their nafs and their desires in check in other aspects of their lives. I'll give you another example. A man came to Abdullah bin Umar. This is probably towards the end of his life, where he is. Abdullah bin Umar at this time is probably one of the few companions left. So, like meeting a companion at this point is like meeting a legend.
Right.
So, someone came to him and he's like, Ya khayran nas, you the best of people. Yabna khayrin nas, you the son of the best of people. And he's like praising Abdullah bin Umar. Abdullah bin Umar is like, yo, slow your roll, chill. Like, he's like, Ana abdun min ibadillah. I'm a servant of God. Ana akhafu wa arjuhu. Like, I have mercy, I have hope in Allah's forgiveness, but I fear Him too. I don't have a reserved ticket to paradise just because I'm the son of Umar bin Khattab. And then he says, you people will continue to treat us like celebrities until you will ruin our spirituality and our sincerity.
Allah. Wow.
You know, like man, like if I hope the audience is appreciating this. He's actively trying to get out of the spotlight. You know, he's like, I'm okay not being in the limelight. I don't know if there are any comments or anything that are.
Yeah, so I don't know who this is, but someone said, SubhanAllah, the degree of humbleness is ingrained in all of their actions, which we see that a lot in not only him, but many of the scholars that come in. You know, I was reading one of the poems by Imam Shafi, and one of the lines says, I think in silence is a virtue, or hang on, I have to remember this. And silence to an ignorant or a fool is a virtue. That's
Yes,
what he said. And I mean, Imam Shafi obviously wasn't there during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, but a lot of the people that we hold respect to or that we know of had that characteristics of being humble and not have this know-it-all
there it
mentality.
is. Know
Yeah,
it all. That's the word. That's the word I was looking for. Wallahi. This is,
yeah,
it's, like celebrities are always under the pressure to produce the next album, to put out the next book, the next contract, in the next concert, because you got to stay relevant. And I bet you the companions face that pressure because people are coming far and wide to visit them too. And it's famous about Imam Malik. Someone came from Spain to meet him with a list of 40 questions. And they asked, and one by one, he's like spitting out those questions. And Imam Malik, according to the narration, out
yeah.
of 40, you know the story?
Yeah, he
You know,
says
right?
32, I think all of them except for 3 or 4. So
Yes. Can you tell the audience what he said on majority of those questions? Like 36 out of 40, what did he
I
say?
think he said la adri, like I don't know.
There you go.
So
And and I don't know if you know, the person retorted to Imam Malik. He's like, if you don't know, then who knows? I traveled for months just to meet you, to hear you say I don't know. He's like, what am I supposed to tell my people who sent me here? Imam Malik says, go and tell your people that Imam Malik doesn't know.
oh,
He's like, I don't need to be on the top 100 Billboard chart, whatever. It's like, it's okay. I can live with not knowing and having the label of La Adri. It's cool because I gotta answer to God. That sentiment, that spiritual orientation is beautiful. SubhanAllah. And this theme, you see this in the life of Abdullah ibn Umar, always keeping his nafs in check and putting his nafs down to please Allah. You see that over and over again. And I'll share with you just two things, and then basically we're done. Abdullah ibn Umar, his servant Nafir tells us that Abdullah ibn Umar had this habit that whenever he was impressed by a property that he owned, he would immediately dedicate it to charity, like on the spot. That was his thing. If he was impressed by something, blown away by something, immediately give it in charity. Because he knew Allah said in the Quran, لَن تَنَالُوا الْبِرَّ حَتَّى تُنْفِقُوا مِمَّا تُحِبُّونَ. You will not become a superstar with Allah until you learn to give from that which you love. Which unfortunately, and I remind myself before anyone else,
right.
we tend to give the leftovers. Or we tend to give from the wardrobe, and clothes that have been around since, I don't know, the Bush administration, and now we're giving those away in the winter clothing drive. And not just even intangible things, Sister Nadia, but even in intangible things like time. Like, Allah forgive us, a lot of us will pray Isha in the last 5 minutes when we're about to practically faint from sleep. But like, oh my God, I haven't prayed Isha. Let me put Netflix away finally, and let me knock out my 4 rakahs. And you're practically unconscious at this point. But now, in the lowest quality of attention span, those are the 5 minutes we're going to give to God. Ya Allah, this is the
Allah
situation.
protect us.
Allah protect us. Abdullah ibn Umar, story goes like this. So he was on his camel, And he was so impressed by the ride. Like apparently this camel came with like good steering and a low center of gravity. Like
It was his camel?
it was his camel,
Okay.
and he had obviously different camels. Apparently this one was new, but anyway, he rode it and he was like, he's loved the ride. Immediately he told Nafir, his servant, kneel it, make it sit down. And as soon as the camel sat down, he told Nafir, I want you to brand it because today, starting today, this is a camel of charity.
Wow.
Immediately dedicated it to charity because he loved it. He's like, that's what I gotta give. I love it. I gotta give that. Man, that's, you know how, what kind of nafs control that takes to do.
Right.
You know,
To give hope.
amazing. You were sorry, you were saying?
Well, I'm just thinking that even today's day, just like what you were saying, that I think of refugees, especially what you were saying, that we tend to give the clothes that we haven't worn in months or whatever it is. And inshallah, I just hope that we can learn from this and we can start treating other people who may be less fortunate than us or who may be on the same level, whatever it is, than us, just what we would want for ourselves to our capabilities, inshallah.
Subhanallah, subhanallah. Ameen, ya Rabbil Alameen. And that's really, that's the inspiration we seek from their lives. You know, on this theme of just suppressing your desires for Allah's sake and just confining your nafs to make God
My
happy.
cat keeps like walking in and out. I'm so
No,
sorry.
no, no, not at all, not at all. We're told about Abdullah ibn Umar that by the time he passed away, he had freed over 1,000 slaves. Now, before anyone gets a wrong idea that he owned 1,000 slaves like George Washington, for instance, that's not the idea. Well, whatever he had spare money, not to take shots at the founding fathers, but whenever he had spare money, he would go to the marketplace, buy slaves, free slaves. He would literally buy to free, buy to emancipate. And he did that with whatever spare cash he had until he ended up freeing 1,000. And this tells you in Islam, from day one, the culture was free as many slaves as possible because it is incompatible with Tawheed that you are slave to anyone other than Allah. So Islam from day one kind of created that spiritual culture, free as many as possible. And that's what Abdullah ibn Umar did. On that note, now this was an example of how he sacrificed his money for God's sake. Now this is the final example. This is really famous about Abdullah ibn Umar. Once again, confining his desires to make Allah happy. His wife wanted to do something special for him, Abdullah ibn Umar. So she made his favorite meal, which was basically roasted fish. She kind of went out of her way, prepared the whole thing, set it up, and now Abdullah ibn Umar finally sits down to enjoy the meal, and lo and behold, there's a knock on the door. His wife knows this is the time of dinner, and it's probably one of those poor people. So she kind of rushes to the door, you know, it's like beelines to the door, and she's like, quickly takes care of the problem, if you will.
Right.
And Abdullah bin Umar, obviously, he's like, who was it? She's like, oh, don't worry, enjoy your meal. I took care of the situation. Like, no biggie. He's like, no, I insist. And she's like, well, she finally had to spill the beans. I was a beggar. And but don't worry, we had enough food in the house. I provided. She's like, what did you give him? He's like, well, we had a lot of barley and rice. I gave him that. Abdullah bin Umar is like, you want me to sit here and enjoy a fancy meal and we gave barley to the beggar? لن تنالوا البر حتى تنفقوا مما تحبون. You will not become superstar. You will not become a superstar with God till you learn to give from that which you love. So he called the beggar back, gave him the roasted fish. He ate the barley that night.
SubhanAllah.
And this is this incredible human being. Like, it's so beautiful inside and out. And these are the types of people the Prophet trained and left behind, and that's how they kind of changed the world.
Inshallah, we can become like them, be surrounded by people like that.
Ameen. May Allah give us the same control that they had. Abdullah bin Umar, he passed away 73 Hijri, which is about 62 years after the Prophet ﷺ. He lived a fairly long life, passed on the religion of the Prophet ﷺ, trained a generation of scholarship. In the Maliki madhab owes a lot to Abdullah bin Umar. It really does. It's formed by the opinions. Like the Hanafi madhab is Abdullah bin Mas'ud, Aisha radiallahu anha. Maliki madhab, to a great extent, is Abdullah bin Umar. So, we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless their souls, to allow us to be inspired by their examples. And they've set the bar real high, and we're standing on the shoulders of the giants. We ask Allah to, at least in some capacity, we're able to replicate that barakah. Ameen, ya Rabbal Alamin. Any final thoughts? Anything that you wanted to share, Sister Nadia?
Honestly, I think we covered everything else. I just ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to soften our hearts, expand our knowledge, and just be kind, more kind to one another, inshallah.
I mean, if we can accomplish that, I think that is
We'll be set.
progress enough.
Maybe we'll wear a face mask in public from now on.
I mean, Ya Rabbal Alameen. You guys, thank you for tuning in once again. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you, keep you all strong, take care, stay safe. Inshallah, we will see you very soon, inshallah, next Monday. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.